So I wanted to share my experience with you about how I overcame full body muscle wastage. I haven't always been like this, with these legs and this booty. Yes, take a good look. I'm used to it. I'm going to start by telling you how I came about that situation in the first place. So when I was 15, I was in the shower and I was washing my hair, and I felt a lump at the back of my head right here. It was kind of small but hard. I didn't really think much of it. I thought maybe it had always been there, I just hadn't noticed it. So I just kept an eye on it. About a week or so later, I noticed that I had another one here. So I told my mum, and she booked me in for a doctor's appointment, and the doctor told me that I probably just had an infection and it will go away in a couple of weeks. She also noticed that I had some acne on my forehead, so she sent us away with some acne cream. Sure enough, a couple of weeks later, these lumps not only didn't go away, they got worse. This lump here that I initially had became the size of a golf ball. And I also noticed that I had multiple new lumps around my neck and also around my armpits and also my groin area. So I told my mum again, who booked me into another doctor's appointment. This time the doctor sent us straight away to get a blood test. And a week later she called us into her office when she had the results. She told us to go straight to the hospital, into a children's ward. So after going to hospital, and a number of doctors came in and lots of people poking and prodding me, I ended up getting told to go straight to UCLH hospital on the 12th floor. And when I got there, I noticed that it said adolescents cancer ward. I was looking around and there was teenagers with no hair, and I knew at this point what I had was serious. After a biopsy and the doctors doing further tests, I was pulled into the room at 11 AM, 29th of May 2009. This also happened to be the morning of my 16th birthday. And I was told that I had T-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I remember at the time, the only symptoms I had were these swollen lymph nodes and a bit of tiredness. But other than that, I felt completely fine in myself. I could tell my mum was in a bit of shock to hear this news. Honestly, I didn't really know how to respond to this news. I didn't quite understand the seriousness of what I'd just been told. So I asked a few questions. I asked what this meant in terms of treatment, and I was told that I was going to have 2 years of chemotherapy treatment. I still didn't fully understand the seriousness, and I really wanted to get to grips with that. So I asked the doctor if I have a choice, and they said because I was a minor, I didn't have a choice. So I said, what happens if I just don't take it? To which point they told me I will die. That's when it really hit home. I was like, okay, chemotherapy treatment it is. But because I felt fine within myself, and I knew my mum was in a bit of shock, I kind of felt like I should feel sad in this moment. So I remember kind of forcing some tears out, even though it didn't really come naturally. And it was my 16th birthday, so after that I got on with the rest of the day. I had a lot of visitors because it was my birthday and I was in the situation that I was. And I remember going outside to get some food, and my cousin was going to take the lift, and I said, oh no, let's take the stairs from the 12th floor, given that I'm still able to. I'd like to do that. Because looking around on that ward, I knew that it wasn't going to be long before I wasn't going to be able to do those things. I remember later on that day when it really hit me, when the sun had gone down, my family had gone out to eat, and I was just by myself with people on the ward. And I remember having a little bit of a moment where I did cry, because that's when it really hit home, when I was by myself and I was just surrounded by people with no limbs. One who had a tumour in his leg and they managed to remove it, and another one had another tumour in his leg as well, and he had to have his leg amputated and he had a prosthetic limb. And in the night time you hear the sounds of this ward, and it wasn't pleasant at all. After about a week, I was let out of hospital and my chemotherapy had started that day I was diagnosed. I went home And the thing with chemotherapy is it kills off your fast-growing cells, which includes your white blood cells. And these are the cells that are responsible for your immune system. So when these go, you basically have no immune system during this time. So it means that all the bacteria and viruses that you're exposed to during the day, your body isn't able to fight them like they normally would. I ended up coming down with an infection, and I ended up going straight back into hospital after a couple of days. And with the intensity of the chemotherapy and all these infections that I was catching under the sun, I ended up in hospital for about 3 months. When I finally got sent home, I remember I was a few meters away from my house, and it was just slightly uphill. And I was excited to be home. So I remember I ran that few meters up the hill, only to feel my legs completely just jelly buckle from underneath me. And that was the moment where I realized I wasn't this strong, fit, athletic 16-year-old that I was walking into this situation. I had lost all of my muscles, not just in my legs, in my arms, even my hands and my fingers. I lost all the muscle in that. Just trying to write was challenging for me, and trying to just stand up off of my chair without heaving myself up was a massive challenge for me. And that was the moment that was the hardest to comprehend. By then I had lost all my hair, and that was something that I had already accepted. I knew that that was going to happen, and I trusted that when it was all over it would grow back. But my muscle, being someone who was incredibly athletic and enjoyed sports and PE, and I loved running. Running for me is freedom. I love to run, and to physically not be able to run or walk, let alone walk, was a struggle. I remember I was in a shopping centre when I was feeling a bit better with some friends. We were walking through, and their pace was slow for them, especially I asked them a few times if we could walk slower. But to them, their slow pace for me was like sprinting. Like the amount of energy it takes to sprint from a normal person, for me at the time, just walking at a slow pace was zapping my energy as if I was sprinting. I couldn't keep up with them, and for them my pace was just too slow. And I remember one of my friends asking the other one why I was walking so slowly. She just didn't really understand that my legs just physically, like the muscles just would not take me any faster. Physically could not go any faster. It was so imprisoning to have the memories of being able to run and to walk fast and to be able to do the things that I want to do physically, and physically not be able to do those things was as if I was trapped in my own body. And this was the hardest thing that I had to overcome in this whole experience, was overcoming full body muscle wastage. So I knew that whenever I was feeling a little bit better and I was able to go to school, and this was around my second year of chemotherapy treatment, I made an effort every day that I went into school to walk to school. And I used to walk to school before, and it used to take me 35 minutes. But during this time, it took me over an hour, and it would also drain my energy by the time I would get to school. But I knew that if I took a bus, that wasn't going to help me achieve getting back to where I was. So I knew I had to persevere. So I made sure that every time I walked, and unfortunately I wasn't able to walk back all the time because by the time I got to school I was already out of energy, but at least walking to school was my goal, to help me get back to good physical shape. Whenever I walked to school, I tried to walk that little bit faster, and I tried to push myself that little bit further and try to beat my time from the last time I walked in order to try and build up again. and be able to walk at a faster pace and build my muscles. This was a slow process. It wasn't something that was going to happen overnight, but I believed that I could do it. I knew that this wasn't going to be something that I was going to be weak forever for the rest of my life, but I knew it was going to come from here. It was going to be something that I had to do in order to achieve. This wasn't like my hair that was just going to grow back on its own without thought. So that's what I did. I walked. And I'm going to be honest with you, walking is walking is one of those exercises that you just wouldn't think could build muscle or, you know, really help you when it comes to your fitness levels. But actually walking is so underestimated. If you want to get stronger and you want to build stamina and you want to get somewhere, walking is so key. Like, if you haven't done any exercise today, go outside for 20 minutes and just go for a walk, because sometimes that's all you need. So by the time, I think towards the end of my second year, and actually chemotherapy for me wasn't a 2-year process, it was 2.5 years in the end, because I ended up struggling with it quite a lot, and it ended up being delayed and extended. So towards 2012, I started building up my muscle, and I was able to go to the gym. So when I finally did pluck up the courage to go to the gym, I wanted to test my running again. And this was something that I feared. I was so scared because I didn't want that feeling of having my legs buckle from underneath me again. But I knew that the only way for me to find out whether I was, you know, getting stronger was to test it. So I got straight on that treadmill. And obviously having that first experience of my legs buckling, I took it a bit slow, and I did a slow kind of jogging pace. And I was able to kind of just about jog for about 30 seconds. And that was the point where I realized that actually my stamina, not only my muscles, but my stamina had dropped to an all-time low. Like, my stamina was part of the thing that wasn't taking me any further than 30 seconds. So I knew I had come a long way, but I still had a hell of a long way still to go to get back to where I wanted to be. So I kept at it. I kept going to the gym, I kept trying, and I kept building up. And by the time I finished my chemotherapy, although my chemotherapy treatment was over and I no longer had cancer, but that full body muscle wastage situation doesn't just suddenly disappear just because I've stopped chemotherapy. It was something that was ongoing. I still had to build on that to build myself back to where I was. And that went well beyond 2.5 years that I was on the chemotherapy in the first place. So when I finished all of that and I went to university, I was still in that fearful mind of running. I still didn't feel like I was strong enough yet, and I didn't want that feeling of not being able to keep up with everybody else. And I really wanted to start basketball, but I didn't, because I was just too afraid of running. So I ended up taking up dancing, and my friend introduced me to break dancing. And I thought, oh, this is really great, because with break dancing you need a lot of muscle in order to do it. It builds stamina. It was a nice community as well. So I thought that was a great way for me to build on that without having to run. It was something that I was moving and enjoying and building up my strength, you know, without the running aspect. And I really enjoyed that, and I did that for a good 2 years. And then by the time I got to I think 2015 it was, I ended up signing up to the Tough Mudder, which is about 15 kilometers with about 22 different obstacles in between race. And I wanted to raise money for the Teenage Cancer Trust. Initially I was signing up with friends, but they ended up bailing and I was committed to doing it. So I ended up sticking to it and doing it by myself. But in the lead up to that, I trained so hard. I trained like I'd never trained before. I was at the gym constantly. I had to get my running up in order to achieve this race, essentially. And it isn't something that you just go into without any kind of training. So I knew I needed to get my running back up, and I needed to face that fear. I started back on the treadmill, And at this point I'd built up some strength, I'd built up my stamina, and I was able to run for about 5 minutes. And I was like, this is great. So I set myself a target, and that target was, by the time I get to that race, I want to be able to run for 30 minutes straight. So every time I went to the gym, the first thing that I hit was that treadmill. And I pushed myself, okay, 5 minutes, can I do 6 minutes? Okay, I've done 6 minutes, can I do 7 minutes? And before you know it, I was doing 10 minutes, and then 15 minutes. And then I was able to run 15 minutes straight. And then 20 minutes, and maybe with, a minute or two in between of walking. And then I just built it up that way. And before you know it, I was able to run for 30 minutes straight. With time and effort and perseverance and dedication and determination, I managed to achieve it. And I ended up doing that race. And after the first 3 obstacles, I was running alongside people who were going at the same pace as me. And there were 3 guys who had a 4th member of their team drop out, so they needed an extra person. So they allowed me to join their team. So it meant that for the rest of the race, I had a team to help me through these obstacles, and we can help each other through the obstacles. And it was the best. I had the best time doing this. And it was, for me, it was such a milestone in my life, because I'd finally achieved not only where I was before, not only where I was before I got sick, but I'd actually got stronger than I ever was before. And if somebody had told me that, Amanda, you're going to be fitter than you was before, whilst I was going through that, I wouldn't have believed them. I wouldn't have. Sorry, gets me emotional every time, because when people ask me what my greatest achievement was or is, it's always this, because that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And that was the moment where I was like, yes, I've finally reached that goal. And that was from when I got sick, 2009. I had 2.5 years of chemotherapy treatment, and I reached that by 2015. So it took a good few years to get back to that point, well after I'd finished chemotherapy treatment. And it was one of those challenges in my life that affected me on every level, like mentally, physically, emotionally. It was challenging. So I wanted to share this story with you, because if you are going through anything like I've just described, or you just simply have muscle weakness and you want to get stronger, or whatever it is that your goal is, and you feel like you're not where you want to be, and you can vision where you want to be, and you're just not there yet, and you don't feel like you're there yet, and maybe you don't feel like you're making progress. But I want you to know that there's hope, and you can do whatever it is that you put your mind to. And all it takes is, especially when it is goals, physical goal, losing weight or getting stronger, or even if it's something like learning something new, and you feel like you really want to learn something new, you have a passion for it, but you might not be very good at it yet. All it takes is 20 minutes a day, or 20 minutes as often as you can, to work towards that goal. And every day, don't focus too much on the future, knowing that you're putting that effort in every single day, or every step that you put that effort in, you're a step closer to reaching that goal. And eventually you will reach it, because you're putting that action and the doing and the effort into actually reaching that goal. So I hope this was insightful, and have faith in yourself and be patient with yourself, because there were so many times where I was just so frustrated with myself, just in my own body, when there wasn't really anything my body at the time could do. you know, and obviously that's not very helpful, but you know, so have patience with yourself. You will get there. Let me know in the comments below if you know you have a goal. I'd love to hear them, and you know, I'd love to hear your stories as well. So if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you want to see more of these type of videos, please subscribe. That would help me a lot, and I will see you in the next video.